بسم الناس سواء العاكف فيه والباد ومن يرد فيه بإلحاد بظلم نذقه من عذاب أليم وإذ بوأنا
إن الحمد لله نحمد ونستعين ونستغفر ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد وهذا درس this lesson tonight بإذن الله the 17th lesson from learning the Arabic language of the Quran course going over الفعل الماضي أو التصريف تصريف فعل الماضي والمضارع على كلمات جاء. Going over the conjugation of the past tense verb and the present tense verb jaa'a, which he came, a review going over jaa'a, which means he came. هو جاء هما جاء هم جاءوا هي جاءت هما جاءتا هن جئنا أنت جئت أنتما جئتما أنتم جئتم أنت جئت أنتما جئتما أنتن جئتن أنا جئت نحن جئنا. With this conjugation of jaa'a, it's a good introduction of conjugating the verb with a letter in it that is odd or unusual with the hamza. We went over last week this particular conjugation, and every student should be able to conjugate this now. Today, inshallah, we will follow up with fi'lu المضارع for jaa'a. هو هما يجيئان. هما يجيئان. هم يجيئون. هي هما تاجئان. هن هن يجئن. أنت. تجيء تجيء أنتما تجيئان أنتم تجيئون أنت. Pay attention to this one. تجيئين أنت تجيئين أنتم تجيئان أنتن أنتن تجئن أنا أجيء أنا أجيء نحن نحن نجيء. So this is the مضارع for جاء يجيء. In the Arabic language, when conjugating, there's certain patterns that you should memorize. Later on in the future, inshallah ta'ala, that we will go over fi'l mudara, the present tense verb. I'm sorry, we go over fi'l mu'tal, the weak verbs and weak letters in the Arabic language related to conjugating verbs. You will see that there is a particular pattern. Once you understand that there is a particular pattern, that you memorize the pattern. You memorize certain verbs because its pattern is common with other verbs. So there might be 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different types of patterns that you will memorize with conjugating verbs. Now you will see that the first, second, and third radical, no matter what letter is there, but the vowel, it might be conjugated different from the Madhi and the Mudara, or the letter, when it comes to the weak verb, that the Madhi, the radical, that is a weak letter in the Madhi, and the Mudara is going to be different. This is not an introduction to the weak verbs or anything like that, but this is an introduction into understanding that there are some, like the Hamza, how you conjugate a word that has Hamza in it. And we learn this from Jaa'a. Later on, in the next previous lessons or the coming lessons, inshallah, we will go over weak letter verbs. Today, I just want to finish the conjugation for the Mudara. We finished the Madhi from last weekend or last Friday. And today, we're going over the Mudara of Jaa'a. Jaa'a yaji'u. Huwa yaji'u. Huma yaji'ani. Hum yaji'una. Hiya taji'u. Huma taji'ani. Hunna yaji'na. Anta taji'u. Antuma taji'ani. Antum taji'una. Anti taji'ina. Antunna. Antuma taji'ani. Antunna taji'na. Ana aji'u. Nahnu naji'u. Very important with this conjugation and understanding and looking at the patterns for the conjugation of verbs. I like for everyone to write down this, the past tense, if they didn't write it from before, and the Mudara. I will publish the page. And I will link it to the comment section for those who need it. Today I was contemplating, do I want to make this into 2 lessons today? Because I was thinking about making it from 2 lessons. Because last weekend or last Friday, the class that we had, I mentioned about two or three different things. And I realized later on that there were some small mistakes and typos, and there was maybe some confusion for some people who were into that lesson and seeing 2 different topics. So I was contemplating to make a second video for tonight, or maybe do it for next weekend, for some things related to indicating verbs. I will contemplate on that until the next 5 or 10 minutes, inshallah. So with the 17th lesson of Jaa'a, I want to write down its masdar, which I didn't do. I just look at it right now, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm missing, and I'm missing the masdar. So let me write down the masdar for this conjugation. Jaa'a, yaji'u. Then I'm going to write down the commandment form of the verb. We're going to write the masdar. We call the grunt, the noun that comes from the word. Jayun, or sometimes, like I said before, the masdar could be 2 words or 3 words. Ma, maji, These 2 are the masdar. At the end, I will conjugate the commandment form of this word. Now, the commandment form, you're going to notice when I finish writing it, there's no hamza. There's no alif or hamza. When we get there in a few minutes, inshallah. Ismul fa'il. We worry about that later on down the line because I will introduce some lessons later on down the line. What is ismul fa'il? What's the fa'il of the word? We learn this later on, but I want to write it so we have it for future reference already in this lesson. I'm writing this only for future reference for us. All right, now with the amr. Amr. Amr means the commandment verb, the commandment form. Jaa'a. Jaa'a. Come. Jaa'a. Anta. Jaa'a means you come without writing anta. Antuma. Ji'an. G-O. أنت. G-E. أنت. G-E. جئنا. أنتن. جئنا. So publish a note. I want to write something at the bottom for my own reference, inshallah. Yes. Sister Aliyah is the master equivalent to an ing in a verbal noun. Yes. That's what the master is. Yes. What we call the ground in English, or the verbal noun. Yes. Ismu fa'il or ismu maf'ul. We talk about that maybe down the line, not now. When we finish the weak verbs and stuff like that, then I will talk about ismu fa'il, ismu fa'il, ismu maf'ul. When we finish the weak verbs and conjugating, learning how to conjugate weak verbs, and I talk about this because ismu fa'il has something to do with the structure of the past verb. Ismu fa'il is the noun. Ismu maf'ul. These are words that you see, like maji'un. I have some lessons already written out in the notes for this, but I realized that we have to learn some of the conjugation for the weak verbs before I get into ismu fa'il, because some these words that we have to, it's some rules to it, and I think that when we learn the weak verbs related to conjugation, then ismu fa'il, I could explain it in detail from verbs that are sound to write the ismu fa'il, and then the verbs that are weak verbs, and then how to write the ismu fa'il or ismu maf'ul. This is a lesson down the line, inshallah, when we finish the weak verbs, inshallah. But I'm writing notes in the lessons now, so I know what to do later on, or for students who are already there, they go back and they look. When I get there, they might see these things already written down in the lessons. Will help us in the future lessons, inshallah. I just want to add a few more things, inshallah. With any questions, it's time for the questions now. I'm still contemplating, do I do the second part of the lesson tonight with a new video? Is there any question pertaining to this lesson? This is a good time to ask now. Yes, this is a weak verb. I'm sorry. Yes, sister. This is a weak verb, yes. Because the alif here in the modara, the alif in the Madi in the past tense, and the modara, it becomes ya, right? It becomes ya. So yes, this is a case of a weak verb. Yes, this is a weak verb. This is fi'lu al-mu'tal al-ain. The second radical of the modara is changing to ain. I highlight that. And I'll write this down. Right? Jaa'a. Right? The second radical, alif, in the mudara becomes ya now. Yes. So this is actually a weak verb. I wasn't just really concentrating deep, but this is a weak verb. So this is actually an introduction into a weak verb, right? The alif here is a weak verb. Any more questions? I will do that in a new lesson, either this tonight or tomorrow. I will do that in a new lesson because I noticed from last weekend that I do a lot of things in that one lesson, and I want to really do, instead of doing 2 or 3 topics in one lesson, do each topic in the video by itself. So if I don't go over it tonight, I will go over it, inshallah, next Friday, inshallah, the signs of the verbs. Any more questions? I will give you, everyone, some time to write down some of these notes. Write down the commandment form, the Madara and the commandment form. In between that, if there are any questions or might see a typo and when I've written in the notes, I will wait and then we will go over them when I make the correction, inshallah. I'll give us about 5 minutes to do so. For those who want to write it down, I will let you write it down. The Amr, the Mudar, and the Amr, inshallah. Give 5 minutes. And if anybody have any questions, it's a good time to ask now.
ما لم ينزل به سلطانا وما ليس لهم به علم وما للظالمين من نصير وإذا تتلى عليهم آياتنا بينات تعرف في وجوه الذين كفروا المنكر يكادون يسطون بالذين يتلون عليهم آياتنا قل أفأنبئكم بشر من ذلكم النار وعير. صدق الله العظيم.
رتل علينا القارئ الشيخ ماهر المعيقلي ما تيسر له من أول سورة الأنبياء إلى آخر سورة الحج.
هذه إذاعة القرآن الكريم من الدوحة.
ذكر في القرآن الكريم:
إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر.
كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ذات يوم بين أصحابه إذ أغفى إغفاءه ثم رفع رأسه مبتسما فقال له أصحابه رضي الله عنهم: ما أضحكك يا رسول الله؟ قال: أنزلت علي آنفا سورة فقرأ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. والكوثر نهر عظيم في الجنة يصب منه ميزابان في حوضه صلى الله عليه وسلم الذي في الموقف يوم القيامة. وقد ورد في السنة الصحيحة ذكر صفات النهر الذي في الجنة والحوض الذي في أرض المحشر. فمن صفات نهر الكوثر الذي في الجنة: حافته قباب اللؤلؤ المجوف، وتربته طيبة الرائحة، وحصباؤه اللؤلؤ، ماؤه أشد بياضا من اللبن وأحلى من العسل، فيه طير أعناقها كأعناق الإبل. وأما صفات الحوض الذي في أرض المحشر فهو مسيرة شهر، وماؤه أبيض من اللبن، وريحه أطيب من المسك، يصب فيه ميزابان يمدانه من الجنة، وفيه أباريق الذهب والفضة كعدد نجوم السماء، من شرب منها فلا يظمأ أبدا. إلا أنه ليس كل من انتمى للأمة المحمدية سينال نعمة وشرف الشرب من حوض النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، إذ إن هناك من هذه الأمة من يبعد ويدفع عن الحوض دفعا شديدا. قال علماؤنا رحمهم الله أجمعين: فكل من ارتد عن دين الله أو أحدث فيه ما لا يرضاه ولم يأذن به فهو من المطرودين عن الحوض المبعدين عنه، وأشدهم طردا من خالف جماعة المسلمين وفارق سبيلهم.
ذكر في القرآن.
Okay. Since there's no more questions, I hope everybody was following this particular lesson to able to understand the conjugation of Jaa'a, which is in a weak verb, because I forgot, look at this aleph, but it's an odd verb, and normally because it has hamza. And this is the reason why I brought it, because it was a weak verb because of the hamza at the end. All right. And it was ordinary, it was very ordinary. So there's some form of verbs. When we get into weak letter verbs, we're going to start seeing more things like this. And this is just a good introduction. And this is a verb that we should learn how to conjugate, because we have the regular words like daraba, kharaja. Now you see something different with hamza in it. But yes, the aleph in the second radical is a weak letter, so this is a weak verb. This is a weak verb. I've written at the end of the lesson, which is I'm not going to get into right now, deep into the meaning, but what are the weak letters? Aleph, waw, and ya. We will get a little bit more into that as a whole lesson by itself, a whole complete lesson by itself, when I start to introduce weak letter verbs. Inshallah, next Friday, I'm going to just talk about the signs of the verb. I'll make a special lesson just talking about the signs of the verb, because I know in the last lesson I combined this lesson today or tonight and the lesson related to the signs, and I noticed that I made slight mistake, and I noticed at the same time I threw like 2 or 3 topics in one video, right? And then I didn't prepare the lesson too well, because when I forgot my book at home that was going to explain from reading the weak verbs in the website I was using reading from. It's a explanation of the same book, but it was in a different way, and I already had some things highlighted in my book, and I actually forgot my book tonight also at home. I thought I had a copy of the book here in the masjid where I work at, and I don't have a copy because I gave out the copy here to somebody to use, so I hope they're using it. But I will bring my copy from home, and I'll write out a detailed lesson, which I also left in the notes here from last weekend. But I have another explanation. I wanted to explain a little bit more detail about what are the signs of verbs. We might, inshallah, I'm thinking about it, we might end next weekend class. We might just talk about a review. What are the signs of the isms? What are the signs of verbs? And what are the signs of the harf? I'm thinking about that. That'd be a little bit review, but I'm contemplating on it right now. If I'm going to do it, what are the signs of the ism? Maybe I do it on a Saturday, not on a Friday, but on a Saturday. I will let people know if I'm going to do that, because I want to throw what are the signs of the verbs and what's the sign of an ism all in one lesson. I don't want to do that. One video lesson, I don't want to do that. I want to put it in a separate video outside of the lessons pertaining to just verbs and conjugating verbs, right? What is an ism? What is a harf? I just wanted to put the signs. What are the signs of the ism? And inshallah, that'll be the next weekend. Okay, somebody asks, what are the patterns, the signs of the patterns of the verbs? If you notice here what I've written here, if you notice, without me saying the pronouns, right? Without me saying the pronouns, Jaa'a, Jaa'a, Jaa'u, Jaa'at, Jaa'ata, Ji'na, Ji'ta, Ji'tuma, Ji'tum. You notice a pattern? Ji'ti, Ji'tuma, Ji'tunna, Ji'tu, Ji'na. You don't notice the patterns there? There's a pattern there. Yaji'u, Yaji'ani, Yaji'una, Taji'u, Taji'ani, Yaji'na, Taji'u, Taji'ani, Taji'una, Taji'ina, Taji'ani, Taji'na, Aji'u, Naji'u. There's a pattern there. Another pattern that I can explain to you, and another way of writing it, it wasn't. Come on, bad boy. Why you writing English when I got you on Arabic fonts to be writing? Let's put some space. Oh, that wasn't. In Arabic, fa'ala. For this verb, yaf'ilu. The wasn't of Jaa'a. Jaa'a, its pattern. Fa'ala yaf'ilu is on that pattern. And this pattern is called, this pattern here ending the kasra, the second radical with ayn. The second radical has ayn. The ayn has kasra. I'm sorry. The ayn has kasra. The ayn has kasra. So I can't highlight it. Can I? I think they would make it. Let me write it bold. Right? It has kasra. Right? Wish I could highlight it on this thing. Right? It has kasra underneath it. Right? Right? Jaa'a yaji'u. This is the pattern for it. You notice here, the Modara, I put kasra. Some books will write the pattern like this, but there is a pattern. The other pattern I'm talking about is the conjugation. The pattern is the actual conjugation of the verb, as I read it from before. If you know that there's a rhythm pattern to it, related to the pronoun of the actual verb, there is a particular pattern. There's a rhythm to it, right? And we can see it as clearly that you can see it. Once you memorize or start to learn about verbs, you see that there are certain patterns. Later on, we'll find that there are verbs that have 3 letters, verbs that have 4 letters, things like this, right? We learn about that a little bit later on, a little introduction to it from the book of Arabic Made Easy talks about it, which is called Al-Mujarrad Al-Thalathi, Al-Mujarrad Raba'i, right? We talk about that later, right? A little bit later. We learn about some of the patterns then and there. But this is from, this pattern is Al-Mujarrad Al-Thulatha, right? Mujarrad Al-Thulatha. Later on, we're going to see from the Mujarrad, you have Mujarrad, you have Muzid, increasing the letters, like when the verb has a shadda on it, right? Or has additional letter on it, right? Instead of 3 letters, there's something added to it, some form or some fashion, to the roots. Something is added to the roots of the verb. Something is added to the root of the verb. All right? We'll learn about that stuff later on. It is a little bit complicated. And it's not really introduction into Arabic patterns. Arabic verbs. It is patterns. It's not an something introduction. It's complicated. Rubai, Muzid. Learn about later on. I was looking at one of the books. It's not beginners. All right. We learn a little introduction later on, and down the line when we go over some weak verbs and things like this. We get a little bit more into it in conjugating weak verbs. Some people have problems with Arabic. It's related to this subject right here, verbs. Most people have problems with Arabic. It's related to verbs in the conjugation. And the easy solution for learning about verbs is that you don't just jump on the hard thing first. You don't go to the most hardest, complicated thing and just jump on it. You master the basic lessons, the basic rules, the basic things to Arabic verbs. You learn the basics first. If you're weak in the basics, you're definitely not going to get the things that are more advanced or intermediate and advanced. You're not going to get them, not at all, if your foundation is weak. To have a basic foundation, everything I taught already about verbs and its conjugation, you need to understand that. If somebody at this lesson right now and don't understand or don't know the pronouns, you're not going to understand weak verbs. If you don't understand the conjugation I already taught, not from this lesson, but the previous lesson from past tense verbs and its conjugation, and you don't have it memorized, you're not going to understand nothing about the weak letter verbs. If you don't understand how to conjugate the Modara from I taught in the past lessons in the past, if you don't know how the conjugation, like Dahaba, Yadhabu, how to do a Tasrif, how to do the conjugation, if you don't know about it and it's hard, you're going to have problems learning about weak letter verbs because now something is changing. And that's why when I taught about verbs, this was not the first lesson I taught about conjugating verbs, because you notice something is different in this conjugation. You notice that I didn't start out teaching, when I start teaching about verbs in the conjugation, I didn't teach you from the beginning the commandment verbs. I didn't start out with that. I started with the past tense verbs, sound verbs. Past tense, sound verbs, Modara, present tense. Past tense verbs that are sound and present tense verbs that are sound. Then I taught the commandment form of verbs that are in the commandment form related to the Modara and their sound letters, sound verb. I taught that first. Then after I taught you that, I came with Jaa'a. Jaa'a yuji'u. It is a weak verb, but that's not why I came with it. I came with it because the Hamza at the end. I came with because of the Hamza. Right? I came because of the Hamza. It's something different now. I came because of the Hamza. We haven't seen any verbs that we was learning, or the verbs we have for homework conjugating them. None of them had a Hamza in it. None of them had a weak letter in it, like Aleph or Ya or a Wow. We didn't learn that yet. This is a good introduction into weak letter verbs, and I came with it just because of the Hamza. Imagine I taught you this first. It would have been complicated. If you look how I taught you, from the past tense verbs that are sound letters, and conjugating them. Before I taught you even the verbs, I taught you what? What are pronouns? Memorize pronouns. Anta, anti. Memorize that. If you don't have those lessons down, you're not going to understand this lesson in the future lessons. This is all related to the patterns. All introductions to patterns. All the past lessons are introductions into conjugating in the patterns and things. If you didn't master that lesson, you're not going to master the following lessons are going to come, inshallah, in the future related to conjugating verbs with weak letters or weak verbs, or we call them. You're not going to understand them. If you can't conjugate them, the verbs from before, you don't know the pronouns, you're definitely not going to understand the next lessons or the future lessons pertaining to verbs. This is why I gave you everything step by step and the basics first. If your foundation is weak, then everything else is going to crumble. Meaning that this is when people start quitting Arabic. This is when people start dropping out of classes. Oh, didn't study. Take the previous lessons they had learned, not memorizing, not studying, and not understanding them. And when the class gets more complicated and more complicated, they just drop out. And they make all the lame excuses why they drop out. I don't like the teacher. Oh, I'm busy. Oh, he talks too fast. Oh, he's this. Oh, he's that. I've seen it all. I've seen it all in my times learning Arabic language. I heard it all because I am also a student, or was a student, and still is a student. So I remember in studying Arabic in the beginning, all the people who started out with me, I can remember all of them today. I see them. How many of them dropped out because they don't master the previous lessons or the basic lessons? So when the teacher gets into the complicated stuff, they drop out and they say, oh, I don't like the teacher, or it's too hard, or it is too hard. This is going to make you or break you. You know, it's like somebody's going to college. His first year, think about it. Or even before his first year in college, last year in high school. You have to do some serious studying and understanding before you get into college. Because when you get into college, it's another ball game, or it's a different type of ball game. Now you're in the pros. Now you're in the Ivy League. Maybe in high school, you was the top kid in your class. But when you go to college, there's many kids who got higher marks from you, smarter than you, that you got to compete with. And the work is going to get harder and harder. The workload you go to college, first year in college, freshman in college, is not like the workload of a 12 years old in high school. The workload gets more complicated. The further you go in your college career or your college year and your studies, depending on the field you're in, the more complicated the work goes to challenge you. If the person finds difficulty because their foundation is weak, or they're not strengthening their foundation and they're not strengthening the lessons they had learned, so they're going to find everything else being complicated and quit. In many cases, it's because they don't have a strong foundation in learning the basics. Learning the basics. I was one brother in the masjid. He's studying computers, and I went to school for a little while to study computers. And I said, and he told me he dropped out of college because he failed his class. And I said to him, you failed the math class, computer math? He's like, yeah. I said, computer math is just memorizing the patterns. Memorizing mathematical patterns for a computer language. So maybe you need hands-on training, not in the college. And you go to a technical school, going to give you hands-on training, because in college for computers, sometimes majority of the time, they don't give you hands-on learning. So go to a technical school. You get hands-on learning, but you still have to memorize the computer language, which is just memorizing patterns. Same thing with Arabic. Same thing with these lessons here. Arabic grammar is just memorizing patterns of rules for grammar. It makes sense. That's all Arabic grammar is. Arabic grammar is called al-qawaid, principles or foundation or fundamentals. Is just memorizing patterns. That's all Arabic grammar is. Arabic grammar is memorizing patterns related to Arabic grammar, so it make the structural way of speaking Arabic proper with rules, and anybody who understands Arabic, they could communicate with each other, and they have rules of communication, meaning structure of grammar. This is the purpose of qawaid fi lugha Arabiya. But everything in the Arabic language is not restricted to grammar. You have at-ta'bir, which is expression related to al-mafradat, al-kalimat, words. So this is only one aspect of the language dealing with Nahu. Nahu is just memorizing patterns, memorizing the rules, memorizing rules and patterns. And the rules are related to patterns. That's all it is. It don't take no genius to do this. You just have to memorize. So, Sister Ali, I hope that answered your question related to the patterns. And we will conclude our lesson unless you have another question, which you could type it, and I'll try to answer it right now, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik wa shalla wa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.